Hey, it's Golden Buddha here, back with some more RPG horror stories for your listening entertainment. Today we have a story about a player with a DM who doesn't quite understand all the rules yet. Roll post. I realize I'm the only one at the table who knows how to play D&D. Yes, this includes the DM. My local game store has a regular D&D night that I've been attending for a few years. All the DMs are volunteers who receive free admission and snacks for their service. I've mostly had good experiences there, and usually the DMs and other players are really nice and fun-loving. But recently, I had one truly terrible night involving a DM who really should have known better. I've been playing with a DM I really liked for about a month. He did a series of interconnected one-shots to accommodate for the naturally shifting nature of the group. That week he couldn't come for work reasons, so I was assigned to a different table with a DM and players I didn't know. I actually went in pretty optimistic. I was excited to play with another woman as the DM, and the conversation we had while waiting for the other players seemed promising. Turns out, she worked for the store and ran D&D games for kids after school program. She asked for my patience, since this was her first time running D&D for adults. I told her not to worry about it. My first DM had also worked for the store, and he always said that running games for the kids helped keep his skills sharp. I should note that if she was just a volunteer unaffiliated with the store, I probably would have been more forgiving for some of her later behavior. Anyways, this new DM seemed really excited about this one-shot, and I initially had a lot of fun chatting about it beforehand. The other two players arrived a little while later, and they seemed a bit rowdy, but otherwise pretty enthusiastic. The game started, and the DM told us that we had heard of a wizard that had produced stones of wondrous power, and we were traveling to barter with the notorious asshole wizard. We stopped at a spooky, decrepit inn, run by a creepy old lady and her slightly pathetic middle-aged son, David. This opening scene was quite fun. We messed around a little, cracked jokes, and so far I was enjoying myself. I did notice that at times the DM made choices for our characters that I felt should be left to us, and that tended towards summary over RP, but I brushed it off. I rationalized that the kids probably needed more hand-holding than adult players to stay on task. The problem started escalating after we left the inn. The other two players, who I will call Shouty Murder Cleric and Enabler Rogue, started to show a tendency towards murder hoboism. Shouty Murder Cleric seemed to think that it was the height of comedy to attack random bystanders while yelling at the top of his lungs. Enabler Rogue and DM were laughing at his antics, and I was desperately and unsuccessfully trying to steer us back to RP by any means necessary. I started to notice that DM wasn't calling for skill checks unless specifically prompted to, and a couple of times did not even make Enabler Rogue do an attack roll when he joined in on Shouty Murder Cleric's antics. But I didn't realize the true extent of the incompetence until two things happened back to back. First, we met a new NPC in the forest, and I turned to the DM and said, in what I thought was clearly in character, "What is your name, friend?" DM looked at me confused and said, "I'm blank, the DM." Then I had to explain to her that I was talking in character to the new NPC we had just met. That's when I realized that she didn't really have a handle on basic RP. The second thing that happened, 10 minutes later, when we returned to the inn, we had learned that the old lady was a witch who had been kidnapping the locals and baking them into pies. We went down into the basement to fight her and got our first combat of the game. The DM asked us to roll initiative. The other players who were new to the game asked some questions about which part of their sheets affected combat and such. I took a couple of minutes to help them find their initiative bonus, weapon stats, etc. During this whole interaction, the DM was silent and offered no advice. Once I was done helping the other players, the first thing the DM said was, "Who wants to go first?" I was taken aback. We had rolled initiative. She should know that there is a set turn order now. I reminded her of this and she listened to me, but still seemed confused. She seemed to know that rolling initiative was a thing you had to players do, but not what it meant. Throughout the whole combat, I frequently had to explain how pretty basic mechanics work. For example, I made an attack roll and she describing my action, until I stopped her to remind her that I hadn't rolled damage yet. It was a mess. I got the impression that she did not have any stats for the witch and was just flailing through the whole thing. Then we took a quick break. While DM and Shouty Murder Cleric went to get snacks, Enabler Rogue started chatting with me. He could tell I was frustrated and asked me to voice my opinions if I wasn't having fun. I floated a test comment about the DM being a little looser with the rules than I would like to see if he'd back me up on her incompetence. But he shrugged it off, and I felt since the rest of the table was having fun, that challenging the DM would make me the asshole. I really should have faked a family emergency and left during the break, but I had paid for the session and somehow thought that I could gently push the DM to actually learn the rules. It only got worse from there. We picked up after burning the inn down and setting the prisoners free. David, the old lady's son, was bewildered and lost and wanted to come with us. My character gently explained that he didn't have the skills for adventuring, but I took an interest in trying to settle him somewhere with a job so he could rebuild his life. I should add that we had learned that the witch wasn't actually his mother and had kidnapped him as a child so she could have a lackey caretaker. For a couple of minutes, I was actually RPing and having a good time. Then shouty murder cleric got bored and decided to kill David for shits and giggles. DM thought this was hilarious. It continued on like this. I spent the rest of the game explaining the rules to the DM. Not my idea of fun, I'm usually not a rules lawyer, and trying to convince the other players that killing random bystanders in their hometown made no sense. They started getting annoyed with me for wanting to have an actual story, and I started to feel like I was being the bitch here. DM and the other players were having fun. They weren't actually playing D&D, but I was the only one not enjoying myself. I really should have made an excuse and left, especially after we accomplished our initial goal, but the one-shot meandered aimlessly for another hour. At the end, DM was really excited and talked about running a longer campaign. She looked around at the whole table, including me, and started talking like we had all agreed to this. She still didn't seem to understand how fundamentally clueless she was towards the actual rules. I told her that I was committed to my normal DM and would be going back to his game when he returned next week. I certainly never wanted to get stuck in this situation again. I could not believe that someone who ran this game regularly for the store could be so incompetent. After talking it over with some friends, I decided to send an email to the store's RPG program suggesting that someone go over the basic rules with her. I don't know what happened, but I haven't seen her running tables at D&D nights since. I hate that I feel guilty about this, but she was definitely gearing up to run more D&D for the store, and sooner or later she probably would have run into a more experienced player who wasn't willing to be as diplomatic as I was when complaining about her in post. Whew, there's a lot to unpack here. Well, first off, joining another group is always difficult, especially if it's just like a one-shot group. And this doesn't seem like D&D Adventure League, because if this was Adventure League, like they're a lot more stricter on the rules. So I don't think that would have been an issue. So yeah, I don't think she was running for Adventure League. She was just running for the store. It really didn't seem like she knew what she was doing at all. And with one-shots, it's kind of like hard to communicate what everybody wants. If you guys are just getting together and like, okay, we want to play D&D. The thing about that is everybody kind of has a different version of D&D in their mind. Some people view D&D more as a game to deal with combat. Some people view D&D to be more RP heavy. Some people view it as a video game, as something where you can just goof around. And all three of those, or any combination of those three, are legitimate ways to play D&D. If you want to have half role-playing, half combat miniatures, you can do that. If you want to have all RP and don't even roll dice, really, you can do that too. It's really all dependent on the group. But with this, it just didn't seem like she knew what she was doing. And these two guys, the cleric and the rogue, it just really seems like you were mismatched with the group. You probably should have left. Because this is what I always say. You're supposed to, like, if you feel some type of way in a group and you're the only one feeling that type of way, you need to leave. Like, it's not about right and wrong. It's not about, the story or the rules. It's about you not being with a group that understands what kind of game you want to play. If you want to play a certain game and they want to play another game and it's majority rules, you're the one that needs to leave. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. Like, don't be like, oh, well, this is the crappier way to play it and this is the inferior way to play it. Don't be that person. Don't. Just leave. Okay, and just find another group. As for her rolling initiative and not knowing what it was, that's kind of funny, actually. Because that happens a lot. That happens, like, just in life, where, like, people will do stuff. Especially, you'll see at work. My job, I still don't know 100% all the stuff I do or why I do it. I just know I need to do it. So, she understood that she needed to roll initiative, but she didn't understand how it worked. That's really funny because that's how it is with so many things outside of D&D as well. But what I usually do when I roll initiative, when I'm DMing a game and I roll initiative, I let the players roll as a group and then I let them pick their turn order or have them make an established turn order when they get into combat. It actually makes combat go a lot smoother, but I mean, to each his own. That's just how I like to do it. I like groups, group initiative better. But yeah, if you can't bother to learn the rules, there are other games that are more narrative driven. I feel like this chick would have done a lot better if she was like running like Fate or something. That's another good like narrative driven game where you're basically just writing down stuff on note cards and like role playing everything out. I mean, there's dice, but they just have plus and minuses on them. I don't want to get into it right now. But that's really all I have to say about this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and please comment down below and tell me what you think about this and your opinions on it. This is Golden Buddha telling you to stay enlightened.